Hi and welcome. In this video I wanted to show you how to use Kubernetes and how you can actually deploy it on your laptop for the learning purposes. All you need is laptop, Docker, and you can go. Kubernetes is a server application tool that allows you to run your applications at scale, usually Docker containers. It has a lot of features that make things simple. For example, you can create a lot of replicas of your applications, it will create load balancers for you, it can self-heal, and etc. etc. There's a lot of complexity going on, and my goal is to, with this video, is to show you to get started as you go. It's different reading about it and actually spin up your own cluster and then actually see how things work, even on small scale or very limited. That gives you that kind of head start. I've also wrote an article about that, and I'll be following that article along the video. So if you rather read, go ahead, you can read it. It's comingpro.com, Kubernetes getting started, or you can just follow along the video. So what do you need? You need Docker. That's where actually we'll be running our cluster, inside the Docker. So go ahead, download it, install and yeah. Then you need kind, and kind stands for Kubernetes in Docker. So that's why we needed Docker before. You install kind, and it will create your cluster inside Docker containers. It does it for you, you don't need to create any images. It just makes it super simple. Then we will need tool to interact with actually our cluster, that is kubectl. So that's another link that you can find, and all the links are in that guide, so you can just go there, click on the links. So you have kubectl, which will allow you to issue command to your cluster. If you want to run deployment, check its status, if you want to check status of your cluster, and etc., that's the tool. Now, some additional tools you might find useful. You don't need them, but you can find them useful. VS Code or any sort of text code editor, because we will create some YAML files. I created them for you in advance, but if you rather type them yourself, then that's one of the tools. And if you happen to install VS Code, then there is a great extension for Kubernetes that allows you to have a visual overview of your cluster and deployments right in VS Code. And if you are a console person, you like console, I really strongly recommend K9s. It's a TUI application that allows you to have a look graphically and interact very quickly with keyboard shortcuts in your cluster. You can regain a lot of speed. So go install this, and I see you on the actual practical part. Okay, so now I hope you got everything installed, and if you just found me on YouTube, I will be following the guide from my blog, which you can find here, comingpro.com, Kubernetes getting started. And what we got in here is just my post to guide us running Docker, because we will see what's going on in Docker while we play with Kubernetes, and then the terminal where we actually will issue all the commands. And we start with the check whether we actually have everything installed and working properly. So obviously we need Docker, because that's where our cluster will run inside the Docker container. And then we have a kind, and kind is actually what will spin up our cluster. And then we have kubectl, which is actually the main voice of talking to Kubernetes. So we have it, yeah? If you got similar results to me, that's fine. We can now move along to create the first cluster. And it's as simple as kind create cluster. And that's going to create us a single cluster, a single node cluster with a single control plane. So as we can see now, it's already showing up in Docker as the single node. And node is just like a server. It's where the work happens on the Kubernetes. And control plane is a special kind of the node, which is the brains of the operation. So it drives scheduling of all your deployments, all your pods, and etc. So we start with just a simple one. So now we have it, and we can now look at actually the context of it. Yeah, what is it? Context in kubectl context is the cluster you're talking to. Okay, so it's important when you have multiple clusters you work with, that always double check your current context you're working with, because all the commands will be issued against that context. All right, and as we can see, we have some response. So now let's do get nodes, and as we can see, we have a single control plane node as it was said before. Okay, so let's deploy something, and you've probably seen Kubernetes running with a YAML definitions, and we will come to it. Now it's just to show you how quickly you can deploy, for example, a deployment called hello node using that prepared image from the Docker registry. Actually, it's Kubernetes registry with some settings. Yeah, at this point we don't really even care much about that. It's just to show you how easy it is. Look, and it already created my deployment. Now obviously we want to see something about that deployment, what's going on there. So we can just ask for all the deployments. And as we can see, hello node, which was the name we give it there, ready 1 out of 1. That means we want one replica of that deployment. Because you can say Kubernetes, I want 10 replicas. Yeah, 10 replicas of that application, and it will just do it for you. So in that case, we say, I wanted one, and you have one running. One up to date, one available. It's been running for 11 seconds. Magic. Yeah. We won't get into the details of the actual deployment itself. That will come for the latest videos. Now I just want to show you to start somewhere, because Kubernetes is complex, is a beast. Okay, and the deployment is tied to Kubernetes, what you want to run, and etc. But it already gets down to the pods, and pods is your containers running your application. So when we say I want 10 replicas of something, you have 10 pods running of it. And as we can see, we have that one hello node container with hash of the deployment. Again, we will later talk about it, but pretty much the hash tells your Kubernetes when you, for example, will roll out a newer version of your application. So your deployment will change, and one way how Kubernetes tracks of it is by hashing your deployment definition. So then the hash will change and you will know this is a new deployment. But again, we'll get to that. We can, for example, also check events. So I can also see like the whole story of what's been going on then, yeah? We have scheduled, so we just say, hey, I want you to run this image somewhere. We can say that it will go and download the image from the registry. We can see that I created your deployment, replicas, etc. You can see the whole journey, how this deployment came to life, all right? But this is very simple deployment, it's configuration, single node. And one of the reasons why I picked Kind for the local development is that it allows you to have multiple nodes running. So what we're going to do now is actually delete the current cluster, the current Kind cluster. You see, it's gone from the Docker. And we will actually try to create something more aligned with the real setup. So we create multiple node config, that we will have one control plane and multiple workers. So control plane is the brain of operations, and worker is actually where the work happens. And that's what you usually have. We have a control plane or multiple of them, and then many workers where your work gets scheduled to work for. So, and the beauty of it is, let's say you have 10 workers, 10 worker nodes, and then Kubernetes will spread out the load across them. You will put a load balancer in front of them when you, for example, expose as a service and etc. But again, we will come to it. What we want to do now is to run Kind with this YAML configuration. So what I did, let's clear the screen. So this is pretty much files from my blog, from the back end of it. And I have that config file. So if you look at you can see I have that file ready there, already on my YAML manifest. And I will just tell Kind to create that config using that config YAML file. Off we go. Now notice what's gonna happen. Now we have 3 images running. We have kind control plane and we have 2 workers. So our setup will be a bit closer to the actual real deployment. And as you can see, yeah, this is pretty cool. Like how it takes you a little bit of time and you have a full working cluster. Because GNOME means that cluster running here, that Kubernetes running here locally will be exactly same. We have the same functionality like a real cluster. Well, maybe not one-to-one, but most of the stuff you can do with it. You can play with it when you develop, when you learn, and etc. Okay, so we see that images on the right hand side, but what we really want to see is our nodes over there. As we can see now in our cluster we have a control plane and we have 2 workers, and they are all good to go. Perfect. So now we will go again with slightly more Kubernetes like deployment. Yeah, we actually create deployment using YAML manifest, and that's what we usually do. So for example, this is typical manifest when we say, oh yeah, I want to run deployment, and that will be my Nginx deployment, and I will give it a label of Nginx. Labels are important in Kubernetes. That's how you can tell you want to do something or not. So it's not just a label like information, they're actually being used by the cluster itself. We say we will now run 5 replicas. Yeah, we have 2 worker nodes, 5 replicas, so we will want to have 5 copies of that Nginx deployment. And then there's a few more specs. Template is the spec for the actual node, for the actual pod. And then in spec we say which image and then what port. Okay, and again I prepared that file here already. I have deployment.yaml, so it's exactly the same file like on the web page, and we will tell Kubernetes to go and apply that file, which will be deployment.yaml. All right, so now it's deploying. And now if we check our deployments, we can see 0 out of 5. And now it's interesting, let's see why. kubectl, I don't have that command there, describe deployment, and it's called Nginx. So describe is one of the commands that gives you more information, more detailed information about anything in Kubernetes. So if you want to see in detail information, describe is your command. So let's see what's going on there. Point controller is looking okay, maybe it's just a bit slow. But you can see, for example, we have a namespace. We will talk about namespace later, how you can put your apps in namespaces. That's important once you're running production. Yeah, I try to keep this tutorial as simple as possible. Application, replicas, 5 desired. That's interesting. 5 desired, 5 updated, 5 total, 5 available. So it looks like before the time I tried that previous command to get in the deployment and running the second one to describe, it looks like it managed to pull it. Rolling updates. So it's pretty cool when you for example, running newer version of your app, you're telling Kubernetes that I want to, out of all the replicas I have, I want 25% of it that can be unavailable and 25 max. So if I say for simplicity I have 10 replicas, it will then scale up to 12, so there will be 2 new replicas and we allow 2 of them to don't work, and then just rolling updates for you. It sounds complicated, but when you see it in action, it's actually fairly simple. Okay, I'm digressing. Let's come back to deployment. 5 out of 5. So it's done it, yeah? So it went again, pull the image and schedule this across different nodes. Now let's see actually how this works. And if you look there, you see we have nodes. Node worker 2 and worker. So it distributed that 5 replicas across 2 nodes, because I have only 2 nodes, 2 worker nodes. That's why it happened. But again, I didn't need to do anything special. It just saw, oh, you have a label, we have it there. And as you can see in the name, all of them start with the same prefix, yeah? The same hash. That means they belong to the same replica set. and then just the last part of name is different. So it's just different pods, but they all belong to the nginx deployment of that hash. Okay. All right. And we got to the point now, how can you make your life slightly easier with Kubernetes, or generally how you can, the tooling, yeah, you can have something to make your life a bit easier. So for one, we have VS Code extension. So let me open VS Code. And if you installed the Kubernetes extension, you have it on the right hand side. And then on the right hand side, you have your deployments, yeah, your clusters. Now, if I expand it, I have my namespaces. So obviously we're working against namespace, the default one. We will create more as we go. But for example, nodes. I have all my nodes, and I can see straight away all the information about those nodes, yeah? Or if I go and, for example, click on it, I can straight away get more information, or I can get, for example, describe. The same command I run you in the terminal, you have in describe. Or if we go, I don't know, workloads, deployments, that's my deployment, nginx deployment, 5 pods for it. I can even go and ask for logs. I can obviously do it in, everything you see here can be done in the terminal. It's just a way to show you that if you find all this terminology and, you know, command line difficult to follow at first, especially the naming and terminology, then you might find that tool invaluable when you are working with Kubernetes, just to see what's going on. Yeah. So this is one, and you can work around here. You know, right click, play. Again, it's your local cluster. That's the point of it. You can go and experiment with it. All right. But there's another tool which I love, and that tool is called K9s. So let's run it. Let's make this full screen. K9s. So if you like graphical TUI applications, then you'll be at home in this tool. And in that tool, you can, for example, if you do colon, yeah. So if you use Vim and all the tools like that, you'll feel at home. For example, if I want namespaces, I can just go namespace, tab, and that will show me all the namespaces. If I want deployments, I can, for example, go to deploy, deploy, tab, have deployments. I can then press enter, access it. For example, if you have a lot of information, if you do /, you can do fuzzy search. So let's say I want this pp something, ppg. See, it filters out. So when you get that muscle memory working with it, and if you work with any other command line tools like this one, like command line tools, you will get your muscle memory very quickly, and you'll be able to get along and get information quickly. Okay, all right, let's now come back. How do we finish working with our cluster? Exit. Now, if you like to finish, we can obviously, depending, if you want to just destroy the cluster, delete cluster, and then it just gets deleted. Or we can, if you want Docker, so obviously it depends. If you want to just stop your cluster, your nodes, then you can just do Docker stop and those commands. I can literally just press stop in the Docker itself if you're using that application. Or if you have a VS Code extension, you can also do it there. Just word of advice, first of all, stop your workers, and at the very end, stop your control plane. Or when you're starting, first of all, start your control plane and then your workers. Because, yeah, that's the order it should be. Cool, okay. That hopefully you find this useful. Okay, there was a lot of it, let's admit it. But Kubernetes is complex, and I think sometimes the best way to learn something is just to, you know, go there and actually do work. So if you like this video, give me a like, and obviously don't forget to subscribe. And I see you hopefully on the next one. See ya!